Rapid Deploy believes that every public safety agency, regardless of size, should have access to the data they need when it matters most. That's why, since 2016, our mission has been to reduce emergency response times and improve public safety. We are the industry's only integrated emergency response platform. Our web-based cloud platform includes analytics, mapping, dispatch, and mobile apps, purpose-built for 911 in the 21st century. Visit www.rapiddeploy.com to learn how we enable effective, efficient, data-driven emergency response.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be episode 328 of Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by Rapid Deploy and supported by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services. And there has been a lot that has been going on, and I am finally catching up with all of these episodes. This current episode that we're doing right now is going to be coming out in just a couple of weeks. I've got 2 episodes ahead of it, and it feels good to finally get them all back and getting to what I've been doing, because there have been so many episodes that I had in the can waiting in line to get posted. Now we're finally catching up, and it has been excellent. Also, the open mic live sessions have been doing so well. They are now on Thursdays, 10 p.m. Eastern on Facebook and Twitter. And then we've got also the Dispatchers Roundtable. We just did one yesterday with Ryan Dedman of the 911 Training Institute, Halcyon Frank from the Dispatch Lab, and of course, Adam Tim of the Healthy Dispatcher. So make sure to check those out. Those are twice a month. And those are going to be live on Crowdcast and then multi-streamed on Facebook as well. So thank you all very much. And to the new patrons, thank you for everything that you've been doing. I appreciate it more than you know. If you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/WTT podcast for more information on that as well. So we're doing something different. We're actually recording this not only for audio, but we're also doing this off of StreamYard. I completely forgot that there was a complete record feature and be able to put this on YouTube and everything as well, and on Facebook and everywhere else. So this is good. My guest today was actually, he was asking, is this going to be audio, or is this, you're going to call me, or is this going to be on video? And I thought, you know what, let's do this on video, and we're going to do this. So my guest today is Tyrell Morris. He's the executive director with Orleans Parish Communication District out of Louisiana, and I'm going to bring him back up on the screen here. Bam, how's it going?
Hey, Ricardo, how you doing?
I am doing all right. This is going to be good. I've seen you all over social media. We were actually at the same gala back in February when you received an award at the 911 Goes to Washington. So that was excellent. And you've just been all over the place, man. There's webinars, virtual conferences, in the news, all good things, and just really kicking ass and taking names. So thank you for everything that you do and for being a guest here on the podcast. I wanted to have you on and learn more about you. So first off, before we get into your story, how is everything going over there at your center?
Everyone's always wondering, how is New Orleans doing with COVID-19? And I will say right now, we are all just sitting in a sense of pride. The people of the city of New Orleans have absolutely demonstrated that with community togetherness, understanding what the charge is, we can make things happen. And at one point in time during this pandemic, we had some of the fastest case growth rate and death rate than anywhere in the world. And now we have we have flattened the curve. We have entered the city into a phase 1 reopening. Our people are listening. We will only be able to do that because we have phenomenal leadership from the top. Our mayor, LaToya Cantrell, has been leaning in and meeting our people where they are to make sure that not only us as a public safety community have the resources that we need, but we always stay focused on the mission that is helping the individuals that live in this great city.
That is awesome, man. Yeah, we here in Indiana started reopening as well slowly. There's all these different stages, and with my 9 to 5 where I work at in digital, we're starting to do different things as well. You know, we're working with the different dispatch centers to get our techs back into those centers because, and I don't know how you were doing it over there, but a lot of the centers in Michigan and those that we service really blocked everyone off. Like not even officers were able to get in. It's, you know, only personnel can get in here right now, and for good reason, of course. But now, you know, they're starting to reopen and they're taking precautions and stuff as they're getting our techs in there to do maintenance and all that other stuff. And then us as employees also coming back to the office. And, you know, I'm able to continue to work remote if I need to. But I was in there yesterday for the first time since, oh man, maybe the Calnina conference, which was, I don't even remember now, but man, it was weird. It was a weird thing. So, but it is good that people are, like you're saying, listening and really following everything that you got, you know, those guidelines that everyone is putting out there, whether it be your mayor, you know, anybody, any other public official, because that's how you're going to be able to get it done. And it makes it so much easier for all of you as well.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, as we see places around the country, not everybody is as compliant.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen there are some cities who where the stay-at-home orders are not being followed, and we're beginning to see some increases in caseload there. But I think what often happens is a community that does not understand the impact or the workload that is created by their own actions. And so when you go out and you have encounters with people and you are an asymptomatic carrier and you happen to transmit the virus to somebody else, that just increases the workload for a much longer period of time in these unprecedented times for the men and women that come to serve the community each and every day. So we just continue to ask our people to not be selfish and really understand that if we all come together, you know, New Orleans, we're a city that we touch, we hug, we love on each other. And we say, you know, we stay apart now so we can come together in the future. And people have really taken to that, and we're beginning to see the benefits of that.
Yeah, I love that so much because I myself am a hugger. And even if I, you know, if I meet someone, we talk, you know, even if it's a first meet and we're talking and everything, and we're kind of, you know, vibing and all, man, bring it in for the real thing. But yeah, this whole thing has been, I want to see people again. I want to bring you in and give you a hug. Like, I've missed you. I've missed seeing people. So, you know, I know exactly what you mean. Now, there's so much more that we could get into because there's a couple questions that I have that really dig into this and how you're dealing with all of it. But I want to go back really quick and I want to learn more about you. You know, how did you get into public safety to begin with? Because before we started recording here, I had mentioned to you that I had your LinkedIn open and looking at your experience and stuff. And there's a lot of different things in there. And I was trying to piece together myself in a way how you were getting into public safety. So reveal, how did you get into public safety to begin with? Did you have, you know, family, or was it just something that you kind of fell into?
No, I don't have a long history of public safety service in my family, but I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I lived most of my life in the DC metro area. And at a very young age, my aunt, she was the executive director of a homeless shelter in Philly. And I would spend some of my summers there with her. And it really gave me the exposure to the beauty of public service And then as I gone through my life, I always felt ways to or find ways to give back. And then I would say fresh out of high school, my freshman year of college, I was appointed as a presidential intern to the American Red Cross headquarters, and Hurricane Katrina hit the city of New Orleans, although I was in DC. And so I got to see our response as a nation happen quickly and in a very different light. And I wanted to be a part of that change. My undergraduate degree is in arts management, so I stepped out of the public safety arena for a bit. I did come back and work in government, but really in a recreation side. But how I got into 911 was I was a general manager of a water park up in New Jersey, and I moved back home to Northern Virginia to go to graduate school. And I needed a job to kind of keep me busy. So I just applied to work at 911. And I was hired by Fairfax County Department of Public Safety Communications. And the goal there was to fill my time. You know, I worked overnights, I could do homework, but my plan was once I graduated, I was out. Well, I had no idea I would fall in love with the profession. I started as a call taker, I then became a police dispatcher, and then a quality assurance reviewer. And then I moved into more senior level management with DC government back in Parks and Recreation. And then I came to New Orleans, not in this particular role, but really to assist the organization, fine tuning its recent consolidation. And then in August of 2018, the mayor of New Orleans and the board of commissioners here decided to appoint me into this particular role. And I am having the absolute time of my life. I come to work every day, and it is a privilege for me to serve with the people that I do. The 180 heroes under the headset here at OPCD, we answer over 1 million calls a year. And although we are a city of 450,000 residents, we protect 18 million visitors a year. And so, believe it or not, that has a huge impact to the public safety operations of this city. And I have not seen a city or an organization have such a large task but move with such precision, such accuracy and professionalism. And I'm excited to come to work each and every day, no matter what the task is ahead of me.
You know, and that has to all reflect on the leadership as well. And, I think it is Remember the Titans. There's a quote in there that says, actions reflect leadership. And in that sense, in that scene, it was a little different. But in this case, I can see where that really fits. I mean, everything that you're saying, it's got to be because of the leadership. All of their actions, what they're doing is based off of how you go in, the way you're talking, you're so energetic. Like I can feel the passion, even looking at you and hearing it. I can see that and I can feel that. And that's what our people need, when they're going in, man, it's been a long day already or long night or whatever. What if it's, family or just anything that's going on, but you go in and you've got leadership that is that hyped about the job that you do, man, I want to do a good job for you and the community.
And it's interesting you say that. So, since COVID-19, we have seen a decrease in 911 calls, but we are seeing a 350% increase in 311 calls. And they're not emergencies, but those individuals calling 311 need several services. They're the ones that have food insecurity, transportation insecurity. They really need not emergency public safety help, but they need just life help. And so they are reaching out to us more than they've ever had before. So today I got on the floor and I saw that the whole time was a little longer than 2 minutes. And I had about an hour before I'd scheduled this, before we had this session. Mm-hmm. So I put my headset on and I just started taking some calls, begging them out of the queue. And people always are so surprised to see that someone in this particular role would take the time to sit and hop on a radio channel that would take a 911 call. I look for those opportunities. To me, that helps me stay grounded. It helps me to realign with the mission and remind myself why I'm here. On days that the administrative or the executive work gets stressful or it's emotionally charged, it happens. My relief is to go on the operations floor and take phone calls. So at the end of the day, that is the core mission. And one of the things I did when I became the executive director here, I just asked folks around, why are we here? What is our mission? And no one could tell me what that was. So now we have simplified that. In every stretch of the imagination, everything we do must be connected to the mission, even down to the types of things we have in the vending machine. And our mission here is get the right people to the right place at the right time, better than anyone else in the world. Some may say, oh, that's very bold, that's very boisterous. No, it's a challenge. It's a self-challenge, because it speaks that the agency will never ever satisfy with the status quo. We are never done improving. And so adding that tagline, better than anybody else in the world, one, makes us be innovative. We have to know the landscape and the industry enough to know what the best players are doing. We also got to stay on their toes and try our best to outdo them. That is the only way. If we do not, the industry is going to outrun us, and we'll be left behind.
Right. No, exactly, man. And again, the energy, love it.
Right.
That is definitely what's needed. Going back a little bit to what it was like for you in the beginning. You say that you got into when you got into dispatching, you fell in love with it. So what was that like for you in the beginning? You go in, you've had your interviews and everything. Now you walk in. For those who are watching now as well too, watching, listening, whichever, explain what you're looking at. When you walk in, what does the center look like to you? What are you feeling at that moment? Are you overwhelmed? Are you seeing people who are just multitasking like crazy and you're like, how the hell am I going to do this? What is that like for you?
So it's interesting you say that, because in my mind, to what I had in my mind to what I saw, very different.
Yeah.
Prior to going to 911, I did have 5 years in the field in a volunteer fire department as a lieutenant in both Virginia and New Jersey. And, when you hear one side of the radio from a response perspective, you have an image. And I was one of those individuals that had been in the field for 5 years, but I never went to communications. I had no idea, no concept of what was happening there. All I know, there was this voice from somewhere that told me what to do, and I did it.
Right.
In any other world, that would be crazy, where you just follow a voice and you just go. I mean, that's just doesn't sit well in most other places, but it does for us in public safety. But once I walked into the walls of DPSC, I will say the entry process to get in there, I really felt like, okay, the people in this group are the pick of the litter. Like, a lot of people tried. When you come for your testing, the room is busting at the seams with people, but my class only had 12 people in it. So in my mind, I'm like, how did they narrow this down? And as I go on through the process, I immediately realized that this industry is not for everyone, and that's okay. Right. We find sometimes that people trying to squeeze their way in, or find they fit into a mold, or they're only doing it because mom said this is a good job, you should try it. But if it does not sit well with you, if you're not here to really pledge to serve, you're not going to make it, and your career is going to be miserable. And if you do end up making it. And so for me, I was amazed at the other stuff that the communication staff had to do. It's not just putting a foot on the radio to read a script. To me, that's what I thought it was. Well, no, you are making response decisions. And I think I said to you this earlier, and I tell all the time, please don't call my agency a call center. 20% of my real estate on the operations floor is answering the phone. The other 80% is making intelligence decisions about an incident in progress. We are making decisions on who to send, what type of units to send, when to notify, when to elevate, when to predict resources that would be needed in the future. All that's happening in communications. And there's an element of critical thinking and conflict resolution that has to be employed. When I listen to my staff talk about or get on the phone of a domestic violence call, and as we know, those are some of the most dangerous calls that our law enforcement professionals go on. And so we tell our staff, hey, let's look at some history and find out what makes these things resolve quickly. It's the de-escalation. And so let's try our best to de-escalate as much as possible within the first 60 seconds so our officers are not walking into an emotionally charged situation. Now, you can't do that all the time. But we can at least give it our best effort. And we do that by policy, by training, and demonstrating good practice.
Right. No, I am fully there with you. So I ask people a lot, what, and to those who listen, because there's a big chunk that listen to the podcast who are from the general public. And I always have to say, you might not understand this part, but what were your favorite types of calls to take? And I don't say favorite like, oh man, those are fun ones or whatever. For me, because you mentioned domestics. Domestics were my favorite to take. And what I mean by that is where all the, like you were saying, the critical thinking comes in. All of my resources, that's where I'm putting all of that there for that person, as well as those who are responding to them. So that's what I mean by my favorite type of call, or the type of call that I really got into when those were coming in, because that's where I was helping the most. I mean,
Yeah.
medical as well, but the domestic ones were the ones where I was really in there.
Yeah, no, it's twofold for me. On the call taking side, I'll say my favorite call would be the crisis negotiation or suicidal callers, because that gave me an opportunity to really challenge myself and challenge my ability to connect with someone and get them out of this crisis that they're experiencing at the moment. Help them see that life is worth working, is worth living. On the dispatch side, all those high priority calls, the bank robberies, the ones that required me to make some intelligent decisions, have some room for discretion, running criminal histories, trying to evaluate the threat that the officer is about to encounter. That required a lot of critical thinking. It was fast. I mean, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I mean, I know that about myself. I joined the fire department because I love that go when you don't know when it's coming kind of deal, kind of to take off on the roller coaster. You're just sitting there waiting, and then you're just like, ah.
Yeah.
Some people think that's insane. But for crazy people like me and probably you,
Yep.
we love those moments. And so from a dispatch side, it was those calls. But on the call taking side, it was the ones that required me to really connect with the caller and really turn them around. It's kind of a persuasive argument where I'm persuading you that no, life is worth living, or this is not a good idea, you should really put that weapon down. And then to come out on the other end of that, when they do follow my instructions and then have a peaceful ending that no one got hurt, is, to me, I can't think of another time in my life I felt more satisfied.
Right. No, I know exactly what you mean, because those, I would go to the point sometimes with domestic calls where, it's verbal. It's not anything physical. It's verbal at the moment. I've got the one caller who's in the living room. The other one is in the bedroom. They're far away from each other. And the other one is calling into dispatch as well. And I would tell my partner, just put them on hold really quick. I'll get with them. And then I would have them both, on the line, and keeping them both in the same spot, because that's kind of my scene at the moment until somebody gets there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to pull a Halle Berry. I'm not getting my car and I'm going to go there and try to, find the person underground. But, I get it. I get where that sense of I'm in this with you feeling comes from.
Yeah, exactly. And those who are listening and watching right now, I mean, this, like I said, this is episode 328. And I think people learn more and more and more that dispatch is not just answering the phone or keying up on a radio and saying 10-4. There's a lot that goes into this. And just listening to us both go back and forth, there's a lot there that goes into this. It's not just, we're right there with you, but there's all the critical thinking. There's all the different stuff. I've been on a guest on a couple other podcasts before, and they've said, what is it like? What types of decisions and everything. And I've gone to the scenario of, there's 3 calls at once, and you're the only call taker that's there. You've got an accident with injuries. You've got a domestic that's verbal. And then you've got a medical where you're giving CPR. Now, for whatever reason, it's so busy that you have taken all of these calls, but you've got help going to that injury accident already. You've got help going to the domestic. You've been with the CPR call. EMS is going that way. And as they're doing textbook CPR, doing all those compressions, you have a moment to check on that domestic. But when you check on that domestic, it's now got weapons involved. So who do you stay with? And the host would be like, exactly. You've got help going to the CPR one already. You've got this one that's live.
Yeah.
There's a weapon involved, and you've got officers headed that way.
Yeah.
So there's all of that critical thinking. And
in that example, just that alone, what people don't realize is that it's our intervention in the domestic that equals the outcome. I can sit on the phone and count with you for CPR, but to help us in the way, the probability of my intervention changing the outcome is a little lower than my intervention in this domestic with a weapon ending peacefully. So that's where my time's going to go.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And but they would be like, I don't know. It's like, well, you go with the one with the weapon, man. Like there's all that's going on. Help is already going to those other ones, but this one is the one that's going on right now. It is a crazy profession, but man, I loved it. It was hard to walk away when I did, but I felt like everything that I'm doing now, it would help out dispatch.
It is.
Any way that I could do it, that it would help all of that out. But man, I definitely miss it.
I bet. When we're in New Orleans, you can come spend a Friday or Saturday night here with us, and trust me, you'll get your cup full.
Oh, perfect. Oh man, I'll have to take you up on that. That is excellent. So how about your training? Like, what was the training like? Because when I first started dispatching, this is at a small police department in Central Florida, only dispatcher working for 8 hours. When I went in for that first night shift, I watched my trainer take a phone call, and then he turned back to me, a 911 call, mind you, and he turned to me and he's like, "It's your turn now." And I said, "What? Are you serious?" And there's nothing else that goes to this. I did do a beginner's, 40-hour dispatcher's training course, like a week or two later. But man, that first night, that's how it was. So what was training like for you?
I was incredibly blessed and lucky to have a very rigorous training academy in Fairfax County. There were 10 weeks in the classroom, a very rigorous academic coursework with exams. It was like a semester in college. And then you did additional 10 weeks on the floor with your trainer until you could be cut loose and demonstrate skill competency in the predefined benchmarks. And then you were cut loose to operate independently. Here in New Orleans, we have the same kind of scenario. Our training academy is 16 weeks, where we do 6 weeks of rigorous academic coursework and then 10 weeks on the floor. But what we're finding is that the makeup of the people that are coming in, they're coming in very strong with a lot of transferable skills. So they're grasping concepts faster than we have ever seen before. Just our overall, almost like, I think our last class, 90% of them graduated from the academy with honors. Their scores were in the high 90s on their exams. And so we're finding that the rigor of the coursework is matching quite nicely with the candidate profile that we are getting. Now, I will say we do a lot to find the best candidate. In our last recruitment class, we took over 600 applications for a class of 10. So you would hope that if the process is working well, right, that the best 10 are indeed bubbling to the top. And we're finding that was the case in the last class. It ain't that way every class. Sometimes it's a miss and the whole class flop. But we've gone through our process enough to try to find those weaknesses or areas where we may not have gotten the best candidate, but we think we've got it down. Today it works. Tomorrow, I don't know, but today it works.
When I remember when I went in for an interview, the first thing that they had us do, there was like 20 or 30 of us in one room. And I remember thinking, how are they going to narrow it down? Like, what exactly is it that we're doing in here? And someone walks in and they said, okay, so your first test in this process of getting hired with this agency is you're going to listen to traffic. So they had traffic going over the intercom, which, a lot of the times the intercom speakers are crap anyway. So they had traffic between dispatch and an officer. And all you had to do was write down what you thought they were saying and what was going on. And that's how they narrowed it down. So it went from all of those to like 10 of us. And then after that, it was, I don't know, maybe a 2.5 to 3 hour interview where it's me on one side of the table and then 6 people on the other side. And they're hammering me with questions for that whole time. And man, that was hell. But it also showed, can I take the pressure with all of those questions coming in, my answers going back and forth, and that's how all of that worked out. Now, for you, the way you're talking about all of this, before you get into any of the interviewing, do you have any of them do any sit-alongs?
Yes. So our process is first you apply, then you come sit for an exam, critical testing, and then if you pass the predefined score level per se, you're then brought in for a panel interview of the middle manager. So the supervisors of the squads and the operations managers, they meet with you, they have some formalized questions, and then they invite you for a sit-along. And so we tell them, look, we've interviewed you, we have an interest, and now we want you to interview us. We want you to come down on this sit-along for usually about 3 hours. They do an hour and a half, and an hour on call taking, an hour at one of the dispatch disciplines. And then finally, that same time, they do one last one-on-one with me. And usually HR will come in and there's like a summary sheet of all their scores and all kind of stuff. And then I just sit in 5 minutes. That's all it is. Tell me about your experience. And that, to me, usually tells it all. How you thought about this process, why you want to work here. And from then if they pass that piece, then usually most people that get to me get through, because the staff do a really good job. They have taken such pride in who they put before me, right, that they're saying, I'm not going to let anybody embarrass me. And so they had to really, it's like a recruiter. They got to really believe that this person is good before they bring them to me for a final one-on-one. And so usually by the time they get there, they really are solid and golden. And then we put them through the background check process, because usually most people who stick through that piece, all those phases and sit-alongs are serious. Now we ask them the pre-disqualifying questions up front. And we tell them what would happen if we find out if it's not true, kind of deal. But then we put them through the background check process. And then most of the time, about 96% of the time, everybody is successful through that process.
Nice. Yeah, when we would do those sit-alongs, man, there would be times where people would come in and they would sit next to me or be sitting next to somebody else or whichever, and they would say, "This is it." And I'd look at them and I would say, this is not what it's really like. There's just nothing going on at the moment. This is a bad, example of what it's like in dispatch. There were a couple times that I can remember where they sat down and it was hitting the fan and it was going nuts in there, and just the look on their face, like you can tell when someone is real into it or when they're, like, I don't know if I can do this. But even those people sometimes that say that in the beginning, they kick ass and take names later on. Yeah. So then, you go from there, and it either turns out good or it turns out bad. But always the sit-alongs are good. And I'm glad so many more people are doing it, because there were a lot of times where when we would do, bring people in, they would all be gung-ho for it. And this one time specifically, we had like 6 or 7 that came in all at once.
Yeah.
Only 2 made it. And I thought, man, if they would have had like a sit-along or something before, it might have been easier. There wouldn't have been all this money that went into training. And then, the hop on a call, that first call, and it's like, nope, I'm out. But it's also good still, because you don't want to have someone go through and not have one of those calls until they're full time, and then it'd be a real crazy call and they freeze up.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, going back a little bit, do you remember your first call or any early calls?
Not really. There was one that stuck out, because we always had the outrageous one. I love talking to the homeless people. They would call just to talk, and like, to me, that was such. Of all the people in the world you could have called, you called me. Now I'm pretty sure. The call to me didn't cost you anything, but if we weren't busy, I would take an opportunity just to give that person some joy for those few moments that I could spare. But there was one call where a lady had called and she asked me to walk her through measuring her child's baby formula for the bottle. And so, I've never had a kid before, but I fed them or got their bottles ready. And so I'm trying my best to offer her advice, just read the instructions together. But then I dawned on her, I'm like, how have you been feeding this baby all along? So I asked her, I'm like, well, tell me what you've been doing. And just to make it work, we always had that spidey sense, like something ain't right here.
Yeah.
And so she was like, oh no, my mother is, usually home, but today's the first day. The baby is only a month old, that she's not here, and I don't want to call her. So she called us. So they kind of changed the paradigm where it was more of, all right, she knows this calling 911 for this is already outrageous, but this clearly had to be her last stop. So let's get the baby fed. And so I'll never forget that moment. And she was just so appreciative that I took the time. And so I remember going home, and my roommate was like, "How was your day?" And I was like, "I taught somebody how to feed her baby today." And she was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Never mind, but just leave it at that." But those moments, and for me personally, it makes me just realize how blessed I am to just have resources and people and information at my disposal. But when people call 911, it's not my emergency.
Right.
It's not. And I tell this to the staff all the time because, sometimes the callers get short, they're angry, they're emotionally charged. And my response to them was, how calm would you be on the worst day of your life? And you're picking up the phone on that potential person's worst day of their life. So Let's give them a little slack. And once we realize, you'll see staff walk around and, they're getting a little frustrated, and the supervisor will say, "Remember, worst day of their life, worst day of their life." That kind of gets people, reconnect them like, okay, I need to stop complaining because at least I'm not the one at the other end of this phone.
Right.
And those individuals that have a hard time grasping that, because we have some very high customer service standards here or service delivery expectations here. We do not settle for mediocre. That is not okay here. And when staff have a hard time rising to our service expectation levels, those are the kind of conversations that we have. Well, why did you get short with this person? Why were you so angry? And do you realize the perspective the other person has on the phone, or why they're even calling you? Once staff lose sight of that, we coach them up or coach them out.
Right.
Because it is possible for the job to outgrow people. We always talk about how the person outgrows the job. The job can outgrow the person as well. And we have to be very real and very honest in that conversation. It doesn't have to be a tense conversation. I know, in the few times we've had to separate someone from employment, I tell the leadership staff, do not come to me to recommend separation unless you can all rest assured the agency has done everything in our power or our control to remedy this performance issue. Conduct is different. We handle conduct very separately. We separate the conduct from performance. But if it's a performance issue, we really, really try to drown the person in resources. So at the end of the day, the only other option is organizational fit.
Right. No, yeah, I've always told people, there was at one point where all of us in dispatch were trainers. Like, we weren't CTOs, we weren't certified training officers, but we were so low staffed that everyone, it was a family thing. Like, everyone was going to do it. So, and I would tell people, when they were in there, when they're calling in, they're not calling because they're having an awesome day. Even those who are calling in for, sometimes parade times or fireworks or whatever, for whatever reason, they're calling in, and you never know. That could be a cover for something else that's going on.
Yes.
There could be something else going on in the background. So always listen to what is going on, because somebody might be asking you for fireworks times, but you don't know. That person could be in a domestic situation, or there could be someone who's just there with them and they need help. So treat every call like it's an emergency, because it might be the last time somebody calls. Even if if that's their first time calling, that might be the last, because why would you want to call and, be ridiculed or whatever, when you need help?
Yeah.
So right there with you. What about like a call that has stuck with you? Everyone has, or seems to have, a call that is. I have a few of them. When my grandmother passed away, I was the one who took that call. It just happened to be that, it was meant to be that I was going to be the one to take that call. And actually, before we get to this part about any calls that like really stick with you like that, I actually want to go back really quick to something that you were saying about what you really remember and also enjoyed were having or when the homeless would call in, because you would just talk to them. You would take that moment. Now, with that, was there anything in your life maybe that kind of prepared you for that, in a sense? And what I mean by that is, so I took a suicidal call once where a person called in because they were having extreme back pain and they didn't want to live anymore. I had myself been dealing with a lot of back pain like a month or two before that call, and yoga ended up being my answer. So in that suicide call, I started talking to the person. I got to know that person, and I told them what worked for me. And at the end of it, um, she said she didn't want to kill herself anymore, and she had gotten help. And she said thank you, that she was going to look into yoga. And for all I know, this person is out there as a yoga instructor or something. But every time I do yoga myself, I feel connected to that person because of that call. So it was almost like the call was meant for me to take because I had experienced something before that I was
Yeah.
able to help that person. So that's what I mean for you. You know, do you think there was anything maybe in your past that kind of prepared you for talking to the homeless when they call in? Because you take, a moment to really connect.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, my mother has a heart of gold, and no matter what you do, say, whatever, she always has this warm embrace.
Mhm.
And she's a nurturer of people, even when I'm like, this is not your job to take care of these people, but that's just her nature where she's mom to everybody.
Mhm.
I talked my friends, even today, if they're coming to my home, my mom's house for Christmas Day, she don't care if you're there for 5 minutes. There will be a gift under the tree with your name on it.
That's
It could be the first time that she's met you, but one, I better tell her you're coming, so she can have some kind of gift under the tree with your name on it. It is those types of moments where she's so tuned into the individual's feelings and forget the inconvenience it may cause me. Because if you really evaluate it, there's no inconvenience greater than that person's need, probably, and the joy you're going to bring them by that small act of kindness. And I guess, in my life, I'm originally born in Philly.
Mhm.
And in like any major inner city, you may find some pockets of the city where you really get exposed to people who are having a rough time. And when you see that firsthand as a child or as a teenager or even as an adult, that should remind you just how lucky and blessed you are. And again, no matter how bad your day is, there's always somebody else having a worse day. And particularly, you mentioned your suicide experience with a lady who had back pain considering suicide. Suicide is one topic that is extremely close to me personally. When I was in the fire department, I had a really good friend in New Jersey call me one evening, and I was at the firehouse and I was on a call, so I couldn't answer his call, and I didn't call him back. And so I went through the night, went to bed, what have you. When I woke up the next morning, he had killed himself. And from the timing of, the social media post, going back to look at, if it was in my hometown back in New Jersey, when the 911 call came in, it appears that I was the last call that he made before he died. And it took me a very long time to be okay with that. To be able to even say this. It was a very, very rough moment. And so my very first 911 call in Fairfax, that was a suicide, I was still with my trainer. And of course, I didn't share this level of detail with her. And it was still honestly like 2 years old for me. So to me, it's still very fresh. And then when I hung up that phone, she looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And I lost it. And I just fell apart. I remember I had to get up and I had to run off the floor because I didn't know what to do. This is the first time that I've ever had to face these true emotions that 2 years after. Of course, when he died, I had my moment, but I had never talked about it again. I had never even considered it. And then this call just brought out these raw emotions that I realized were in there so deep. And then all of a sudden, here they were. And at the end of it, she said to me, she says, "You handled that call really, really well." And I'm so thankful for my own experience, because we've all heard 911 calls handled poorly. And I'm just so thankful that person that called got me, that had my own experiences, because I can't say if she would have gotten another organization per se, that would have been the same experience. It took me a long time to come to that conclusion, but as I look back on things, those are the things. And Kelly Clarkson said it best: whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's a pivotal moment in my life where a milestone that I will put and say, this was a moment where I experienced tremendous growth. So even today in my own center, we have suicidal callers, or someone will call in to say, hey, I think my friend's suicidal. We take them very seriously. Mm-hmm. And we activate every resource we possibly can to get this person help, or to verify this person really is or is not in a crisis, so everybody can eventually calm down. And we've had some great successes and here of us avoiding the terrible act of suicide. And so that, to me, that's a moment, a call that's very close to me. That's something that I believe that prepared me. And also my mom's, just our whole life, she's taught us treat people right, do the right thing, no matter how bad they are to you. You always sleep good at night if you know you do the right thing.
Right. No, that is perfectly said. And it's interesting, isn't it? Just the way life happens, and you end up coming smack in touch with someone who needs help, and you just happen to have a similar experience. And like you said, it took you a while to come to that conclusion, and it doesn't hit you right away. Like when I took that call, I didn't put two and two together. It was a little while later when I finally thought, I think that was meant for me. Like it was meant for me at that time, at that moment, because I was able to, and just like you said, and the same for me, I don't know that if anyone else would have taken the call, if they would have been able to handle it the same way, because they might not have had that same experience.
Yeah.
And it just,
they may have done it better than me, but I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And also, you had, your mom has instilled all of that, love and passion and everything in you. So that also helps when talking to someone who, just needs to talk, and you're there and you're doing what you're doing. So that is amazing. That is awesome. Now we're getting towards the end of this episode. There's still a few different things here that I want to bring up, but one of the main things I want to bring up here, because I see it all over the place.
No.
And for those and for those who who are listening as well, who might not know, explain the hashtag of show up.
Okay. Okay. So when I got here, it seemed like we were getting a significant amount of complaints, not really on the processing of calls or how we handle them from a dispatch perspective, but the quality. And I convened the leadership team and I said, what is the issue? And their response to me was, the staff are not meeting the standard. And I said, well, someone define the standard. What does that mean? Well, just do good work. I'm like, you can't train that. You can't train just do good work. You can't train what it means to, how do they know they're doing well when they hang up? And so, we were an agency in transition. We still are. We probably will forever be. But the days of just coming to work and clocking in are over. Those days are gone. When you come in here every day, you must hashtag show up.
Right.
And we have defined what that means. The S means you must be sincere and empathetic. I should be able to hear and feel from the way you're delivering this message on the phone or the radio that you care, and the caller has got to feel about empathy. Your intentions are phenomenal. That's not what matters. If the caller does not feel empathetic, that you're being empathetic towards them, it pretty much didn't happen. The H, honest and humble. We don't lie to our people. So if someone calls and says, hey, is there a unit en route? And there's not, no, ma'am, the unit is not en route yet. Let's be honest with the public about what's happening. And humble. We have to be humble, understanding that we are in a very secure, air-conditioned building. Our callers are in elements we would never want to be in. So let's humble ourselves and try to understand what they are going through. The O is for optimistic. Yes, I expect you to be in a good mood. People say, well, I'm not here to be friends with everybody. Then work somewhere else, because that is what we expect. We expect you to be personable. We expect you to be in a relatively good disposition, because that helps us to identify when you are not, you may need some resources. And so there's a supervisory expectation that they find someone that's having a difficulty with the O. I expect them to engage and find out why and get them some resources. The W is well-informed and willing. It's not what you know, it's what you should have known. So we may issue a policy, but if you don't read it, but you signed off on it, it's not, I know you don't know because you gave the wrong information, but should you have known? And are you willing to go the extra mile to remedy that assistance? Yes, you could transfer someone to another department to handle the call, but you know they're not there. You know the person's on leave. You know they're going to get their voicemail. Going the extra mile is, hey, ma'am, I'm going to send you to this department but this person's on leave, so leave them a voicemail. If the matter is urgent, let me get you to somebody else. Going the extra mile, and are you willing to do that? The U, upbeat and positive. If you have a nasty disposition, or you're disgruntled, or you sound to be just in a pissy mood or negative Nancy, I guarantee the callers feel that way, and I guarantee the units on the radio think that, and I guarantee your coworkers don't want nothing to do with you. So we expect you to be upbeat and positive in every interaction. And then finally, the P is procedurally compliant. Are you following the rules? The P is last on purpose, because although it is very, very important, it is equally as important as the other 5 elements of show up. So our staff wear buttons that say, did you show up today? Just to remind themselves, or if they hear their neighbor not necessarily hitting all the marks, they don't have to call them out and embarrass them. They simply tap them and say, baby, I need you to show up, or you're not showing up today, or whatever the case may be. But when I get to work in the morning, I see staff, I say, hey, good morning, how y'all doing? We showing up. It's like a moment of pride for them that they get to come here, and it's an opportunity for them to demonstrate. We've included show up in our performance evaluations. We no longer ask those long questions. We ask 6 questions. How does this person's performance equate to SHOWUP, period? Those are the guidelines. It is not just interactions with callers. You must show up in all interactions with each other, with the caller, with the field unit, and it even includes me. So I told the leadership team, hey, if I'm in a position where I come to work and I'm upset about something or I'm stressed, please stop me. Just like I would expect the staff to self-regulate, please stop me and tell me, hey, the energy you're giving right now doesn't align, so I can make an adjustment before I step out here and embarrass myself.
Right.
And so we have a really, really good policy, make that safe to do that. And the staff really, really have embraced it. Now, we also have a process when people show out instead of show up. Because we get it, people make mistakes. So when a mistake is made, we have a very defined process that happens. 1, stop the behavior, pause, accept accountability, commit to the growth, and move on. Those are the 4 elements we tell people. Stop the behavior, acknowledge it. You know okay, I made a mistake. If you don't ever think you made one, we're never going to get to the end of this.
Right, you're never going to learn.
Never. Commit to the growth. You have to want to do better. If you don't want to improve, I'm wasting my time. And then finally, move on. Once the staff person has improved their performance, the supervisory team knows, don't come back and tell me about this 3 years later when you want to stack the deck against a person. We don't allow that. Now, we have a clear pattern that the behavior or performance is not improving. Fine. But don't come back and say, well, 6 years ago, she was late from break 6 times. But then I'm going to come back to the supervisor and say, we don't allow this. And this almost now it seems like targeting. So it's our way to kind of prevent workplace bullying, be very clear in the things that we will entertain and things that we will not. But also the staff know these are the leadership guidelines that we follow. So they know that what's going to happen if they do come, they will get a fair chance. And we tell them all the time, trust the process. And so far it's worked out pretty well for us.
That is awesome, man. I applaud you. That is excellent, especially the honesty part, because I remember being in dispatch and, I would hear sometimes people say different things. I'm like, just tell them the truth, because they're going to keep calling. They're going to keep calling in and tying up a line, and they're going to get more pissed and more pissed. And I would tell people, not in a harsh way or anything, but I would tell them, ma'am or sir, the officer's not just around the corner from your house. They're coming from, a couple townships away. They're going as fast as they can.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't get upset about it. They would say, oh, okay, well, I get it. You told me exactly what is happening. And they know that they have to wait. And honesty, as cliche as it is the best policy. And that right there, and all the time, but, just to tell them, No,
Yeah.
they're not that close. No, they're not. Like you said, they haven't been dispatched yet.
Right.
Trying to get somebody to you,
Right.
and that helps to develop that expectation or whichever, and it works out a lot
Yeah.
better. Now, with the upbeat and positive and everything, and I was talking about this yesterday on the dispatchers roundtable, where you know there was a situation, there was a staff meeting that I was in one time where, and I was a supervisor as well, and one of my coworkers was saying, when you come in, your attitude doesn't affect me at all. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, if I come in and I'm being, a jerk, it's going to rub off on you, and it's going to
Yeah.
rub off on everyone else, and it's just going to be crap for the rest of the shift. But if I come in and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna kick ass today, we've got a drunk driving grant going on, but we're going to do this, we've got this, won't that motivate you? Won't you feel inspired as well? And remember, the person's like, okay, okay, yeah, no, you're right. So
Yeah.
that's perfect there for that explanation there on what show up is. And like I said, I see it all the time. And really, for those who are listening and watching, everything that you have explained up to the moment where I asked you to explain show up has really been the definition of it. Everything that you talked about already is what that means. And that is excellent. I mean, just like you were saying, everyone is doing excellent work, and it's all because of the leadership. It starts at the top. At least that's my opinion. It starts up at the top, man. And when it comes down, the actions reflect the leadership there. Now, going from there, we're dealing with this pandemic. All of this stuff is going on, still going on. Places are still opening up and everything. But, for you, in this time, what or how has 911 changed from the time that you started to now with the pandemic? And I want to pull something up here really quick. I'm going to add this to the stream here for those who are watching. And for those who are listening, I have a quote here, and it says here, you were participating in the critical comms and tech webinar on emergency comms during the pandemic. And they've got a quote here from you saying, 911 centers are no longer just call centers. We are data-driven intelligence agencies providing info on a wide range of operations. And you've kind of mentioned this already through the conversation, but kind of elaborate on that, with how things are going with the pandemic. How have things changed?
Interesting, because when we live in a world of big data, and at the end of the day, the places that are open when everything else shuts down are governmental institutions, and within that, 911 centers. And we know that the best public safety responses happen when the units in the field have the most accurate and the most up-to-date information to make informed decisions. That, by its definition, is intelligence. And so that's what we are doing. When an officer makes a traffic stop, people don't realize that we're also not just checking to see if the car is stolen. We're seeing if the driver is wanted, or is the driver on any terrorist watch list, or any gangs. All that is happening behind the scenes, but no one sees that. But that is intelligence functions that are happening. Mm-hmm. In this particular pandemic, it was imperative for us in communications to meet our people where they are. And we had to step outside the walls of definition of our mission by what's on paper. For example, when City Hall had to shut down or restrict access, that's difficult, especially when there's such a humanistic need in your community. So the mayor said it is about access. We need to get government service make it accessible as easy as possible to everyone in the city. So 311 became that hub. And people were calling 311 for many things. Some of it was public safety related, to report a large gathering, you needed a police department response, a building that was open that was unsafe, or I need hot meal deliveries. But what it did was it put the communications professionals in a new realm. They are no longer just taking the run of the mill. They have to really critically think and match resources to needs. Resources that change almost every single day. Every day there's a change. There's a new testing site. There's a new food vendor. There's a new drive-through testing. There's a new food bank that opens up. This ever-changing world, they have become phenomenal jugglers in this circus I call COVID-19. But they have done phenomenal work managing the entertainment per se and getting people in their seats and getting them their resources. Give an example. The recommendation was individuals that have COVID-related symptoms or flu-like symptoms that are not life-threatening to self-quarantine at home. We knew here in New Orleans that a lot of our population were elderly or they lived alone. And so we asked the public to call us to put yourself on a self-quarantine registry. And every single day, a member of our staff called hundreds of people just to check on them.
Wow.
How are your conditions? Are your symptoms getting worse? If they are, I'm also a 911 telecommunicator or communications professional, so I can send you an ambulance. Or your conditions are improving. Okay, I'll check on you tomorrow. Or you don't have any food, I'm going to put a request in for hot meal delivery. It is a one-stop shop to meet all the needs of those individuals during this pandemic. And I will tell you, the public's perception, the emails, the tweets I get from people just that call to them to let them know that government cared enough, and that is truly meeting people where they are. And I hope there are some 911 leaders listening to this episode, and some of the things that really, sometimes we're our own worst enemy, where those of us in leadership are scared or we're not willing to have that difficult conversation that things need to change. This pandemic has demonstrated that we need to level the playing field as far as what services are and are not being provided in the nation's 911 emergency communication center. In the year 2020, for you to call a 911 center and not get CPR instructions, to me, it's flat out unacceptable. Mm-hmm. Some states have made it very clear that this is a requirement, but some states, they're not willing to have the difficult conversation. No one's going to argue with us that there's no benefit in CPR over the phone. No one, not a single person there's no science to support that. But we have there are some people who are not willing to have the conversation. We have organizations that are very small and they're financially stricken because of resources or whatever the case may be. So it's not they're not willing to do the service, but there is this fear that if I start this conversation, I can't afford it and I may be forced to consolidate. Let's shift the paradigm. What is the best way to set ourselves up? Imagine this agency was starting from the ground up, brand new. We are reinventing 911. How can we as a community and as an industry provide best practice or the best service possible? And it's going to require us as leaders to commit to having those difficult conversations internally and externally. And know that not all ideas or innovative ideas you come up with are going to be the most welcomed or the most celebrated, but that's okay. If innovation was accepted so easily, hell, cars would be flying by now on the interstate, but they're not, because we as a community, we seem to be resistant to change. And the only way we're going to survive and always respond to the ever-changing threat, we have to welcome innovation in our work every single day. And we have to lead with bravery and boldness in our decision-making and leadership.
For sure. I mean, this has completely changed how we look at public safety. I think there's even a quote. I can't remember it for sure, but and you laugh, you know exactly which one I'm talking about. But it was talking something about the throwing out the old 911 or something to that effect. How was it? It was your quote. So
throw the old 911 out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, we live in a 52-year-old system that's based on legacy landlines in the ground.
Yeah.
And we keep trying to do these quick fixes where let's buy a piece of technology that meets this need. No, how about we pause for a second and reimagine the entire system from ground up? We might come up with a far better product that's cheaper and much more efficient. Right. But that's going to require a lot of people to have a lot of difficult conversations.
And that's what's good about doing stuff like this, like what we're doing, because the people will start to hear this and start to think more. Oh, that does make sense. That does make sense. Maybe we should be looking into it more. And with this whole pandemic that has happened, there are a bunch of different scenarios that have come out of this. You've got to think outside the box. It's just like when you're taking a 911 phone call and you're listening to everything that's going on, if someone can't speak, that's when you have to start thinking outside of the box because you have to figure out how to get that information out of them.
Right.
I took a domestic once where I was training someone and I was listening on the other end and I heard a pulse and they go to hang up because they heard the phone click, but I hear the pulse and I'm like, no, 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 don't hang up yet. Hold on a minute. And they're like, what's going on? I said, that's a pulse tone. It's not like touch tone or anything. If you hold that open and they get back on the line, you're going to still be there with them and you can just talk to them. And the person did pick up the phone and try to call again because you can hear them, but it was because of that older technology. And I remember my trainee saying, "How did you know that? How did you know to think like that?" I was like, "Well, for one, I'm old, so I remember like rotary dial type phones, and it worked like that." So just in that sense of thinking outside of the box, that is what everyone has been having to do with COVID-19 and responses, and splitting dispatch centers in half. Half getting going to the main one, the other half going to the backup one, or whichever. Call handling equipment. What are you going to use? Something that you might be able to use in a remote location and send all of your calls there. There
Right.
is so much in it.
Yeah.
But I guess from your perspective, what are some of the positives that have come out of this whole situation?
I think as an industry, we've demonstrated that we can rise to the challenge.
Hmm.
We can be creative, we can be innovative, and I think this has demonstrated to the general public the value of the professionals that wear the headset every single day. We call them the heroes under the headset or the unnamed or unsung heroes per se. I think this has been an opportunity for us to elevate them quite a bit
Hmm.
and demonstrate their value.
Right.
And for me, when I produce the stats every day for the staff and show them what the work they've done the last 24 hours, when I say, hey, yesterday we processed over 1,100 301 calls, that's something they go, wow, the four of us did that today? Absolutely. And it really helps them. And they wear that with a badge of honor. Right? And when they're in the community, they tell everybody that they work here. No one's your biggest cheerleader than you are for yourself. Right. And so we were talking yesterday with our leadership team, and like when you walk on the floor right now, the energy is just so positive. Some of the supervisors in the morning yesterday were on the bridge and they were just talking, they were laughing. And the sound kind of reminded me of counselors getting ready for the first day of summer camp. Everyone was just so excited to start the day. And it just warmed my heart a little bit. And I was like, I love that people come here and they like to come here. Right. It's one thing when you come here, I'm only coming here to get a check. I don't want those people working here. Or I want to find out why you feel that way. Yep. Some of it is not of my control, but some of it I can change. So it just really felt good to see them just enjoy the difficult work that they do every single day.
That is excellent. Now, going into the wrap up of this episode, this has been awesome. Thank you again for being on. As we go into the wrap up of this episode, I've got a question for you, a wrap up question. So what do you see as the future of 911 now that we're going to have this new normal, as some people put it, after the pandemic?
I think we're going to see finally come to some consensus on standards. Mm-hmm. Where we as an industry, we can't even agree on how fast we should answer the phone.
It's funny you say that. Yeah.
How to measure that. I think we're going to be forced to do that, or someone's going to do it for us. Mm-hmm. Again, forcing us to have those difficult conversations. As money is tied more and more to performance in these tight economic times, I think that the 911 centers are going to have to demonstrate that they have the ability to meet some high standards. Now we can either get ahead of that and try to define those standards now while we have an opportunity. Yes, I do agree that 911, it should be locally controlled, but it does not mean that some larger body can't assist us in defining what that A+ agency looks like from a performance perspective. Mm-hmm. I think those days are coming. The days of big data and the days of interoperability being an option I think are going to be are long gone, as we find not just pandemic wise, but as we start having incidents of mass casualty or active shooter. With every active shooter incident, the question always comes up when you do the incident timetable. When was data available, and when did it get to the people who needed it? And in the middle of all that scrutiny is communications. And so I think we may be forced to plug some of those technology gaps to bring those things together. An example, we've recently looked at some technology that allows us to tap into surveillance cameras inside some of our larger establishments. And so when the call comes in, we can hit a button and see it for ourselves what's happening to really help the units get a really good painted picture with color, not black and white, of what's happening, so they can make a very informed tactical decision. Today, those seems very far-fetched and innovative. I do think those are going to quickly become requirements. And so this is an opportunity for the industry for us to band together. Let's have those internal difficult conversations. So when the curtains pull back, we all are singing on one accord.
Exactly. And we are definitely living in some strange times, man. But
Yes.
in these strange times, also in, through tragedy and struggle, there is triumph. And that is exactly what is going on. Thinking outside of the box, looking at the future, the new normal per se, and just really, the way you put it, show up for the entire situation. Thank you so much for being on this episode. This has been amazing. For those who are listening and watching as well, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that'll be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @911podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode is sponsored by Rapid Deploy and supported by InDigital, a leader next gen core services. And this podcast will always be free. But if you are looking for any bonus episodes, the behind the scenes series that I'm working on, as well as swag, t-shirts, discounts to the store, all of that stuff, make sure to check us out on patreon.com/WTT podcast. This episode can be heard 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. And with this one that we just recorded here, also on Facebook and YouTube and wherever else I end up putting it on. So have a good one, everyone. It'll also show up on withinthetrenches.net. Thank you again for being on, and
Thank you.
everyone, have a good one.
Thank you all.